The unforgivable crime of Germany before the Second World War was the attempt to detach its economic power from the global trade system and create its own exchange system in which the world finance could not profit. Sir Winston Churchill, and at the beginning of this video, one wants to focus exactly on this topic and then examine what that has to do with what Tucker Carlson did in Russia and what he said, what answers he got from Vladimir Putin, and what that specifically means for Germany, for Europe of tomorrow. I am Hannes Hoertnagl.
And my name is Benjamin. As Tucker Carlson interviewed Putin and Hannes covered this topic.
Quite right, Benjamin, and the video has some surprises in store, including a few references to the infamous Dakak interview. But I want to start with Victoria Nuland. We informed Victoria Nuland a week ago that she is in Ukraine, and whenever Victoria Nuland appears and expresses wishes, something will change soon. And then 2 days later, it will be widely reported in the media, Bild Zeitung, ORF, everyone reports. Yes, the Ukrainian military is experiencing an exchange of high-level executives. That was the big surprise for all media. I just wonder how such a big surprise could have happened, because we had already reported about it days before. Just like bloody Victoria Nuland now clearly says that Russia must prepare for a big surprise on the battlefield, that Putin must prepare for a big surprise, and that means one thing is clear: they do not want peace with Russia, they do not want peace between Europe and Russia, but on the contrary, they want to trigger another escalation spiral. And then, in my eyes, one of the few remaining hopes for peace remains, namely, this last hope could be the new Vice President of the USA, Tucker Carlson, the right hand of Donald Trump. And one thing about it, and now you should listen carefully, the interview with Vladimir Putin in Moscow lasted for a duration of 2.5 hours between Tucker Carlson and him. The Western media initially didn't want to report on it, but after Tucker Carlson published it on his homepage, and thanks to Elon Musk, it could be streamed on X, by the way, not in a video, not in an interview in history. The mainstream managed to be watched so often in such a short time. And then naturally the Western media had to pick up on the topic, and then we will observe what the media say about it. You naturally tried to repress the whole thing right away. A few hours after the broadcast, Hillary Clinton immediately ran through all media houses in the USA to put Tucker Carlson in the right-wing conspiracy theorist corner, and of course to deny him any reputation and to say that Vladimir Putin is to blame for everything. And Western media have done no differently. The Bild newspaper Repriming has reported, I am allowed to quote, "Putin stops strange seizure." Display from Bild newspaper. So, says underneath, reveals interview about his health condition. How many years have we been hearing about Vladimir Putin's illnesses now? Almost as often as the divorce of Donald Trump, which has not yet occurred during his term. And one must say, one can clearly see how Western media heavily prioritize and what one desires to accomplish as a result, without omitting a single word about the content of the interview. And then I like to remember shaking incidents of Angela Merkel, disorientation of Joe Biden, or of course the white nose of Zelensky, who gets very nervous because an interview takes too long. No, there is no speculation. You don't look there. But if Vladimir Putin has a sugar in his leg, then of course an indication that the whole thing is very, very bad for him. And this is, of course, a clear indication for everyone who is familiar with the media and looks closely that certain elitist groups are in a state of panic. That the fear sweat truly stands in history for certain elitist groups. What is being carried out there now? And a second question, which is much more important, we will answer now. But first, share the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and become part of the Truth Project so that we can shape a better future tomorrow. Second question I want to address is different. That's Tucker Carlson, currently in the media due to interview with Vladimir Putin. Tucker Carlson also conducted an interview with Julian Assange in November of last year, 2023. Interviewed Julian Assange, had many conversations. The interview remains unpublished, and I wonder about the reason. Why has the interview not been published until today? Maybe the reason is not the interview with Vladimir Putin, but the conversation with Vladimir Putin, the direct conversation, the direct exchange with Vladimir Putin. And I believe in that place, we will soon witness larger explosives than the ones we witness in the interview with Putin, because the things that Tucker Carlson will reveal there, also from Ukraine, regardless of whether it is about biolabs, money laundering, or baby factories funded by the Clinton Foundation, some challenging things are approaching us. You can definitely count on it. And then one already knows how the Western media will react strongly now to immediately put Tucker Carlson in the same light as Julian Assange and preferably put him behind bars as well. And what we observe there is a collusion of Freemasons, Scholz, and unquestionably BlackRock deep state Merz in Germany. Suddenly, even Merz praises Scholz in the highest tones when he is in the White House, just so that this show of unity against the common enemy makes the truth clear to him. And one must say that the OHF, the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation, is once again going its own way and clearly stating the new paradigm. And so I may quote, the interview, that is the Tucker Carlson interview with Vladimir Putin, was broadcasted last night on the website of the journalist known for his, and now here it comes, sharp right-wing positions, the spread of conspiracy theories and closeness to the former US president. So you can observe how bribing operates. You can witness how you are able to combine everything in a heap, blend it, and then ultimately obtain what you desire by the conclusion of the day. The war in Ukraine has been going on for 2 years now. No single interview with Vladimir Putin, no single conversation with Vladimir Putin, no single peace negotiation except the one in Turkey, which was then cancelled by the others or whose contents were then broken by the West, has ever been conducted. Zelensky was allowed to appear in several Western parliaments, multiple times. Zelensky was present at all public events, from Grammys, Oscars, everywhere, to the carnival appearance and connected via live feed from the war zone. Yes, he stays the war hero clearly, whether FTX scandal, Panama Papers, proximity to white-nosed coatis, Hunter Biden, or of course disappeared weapon money deliveries. And it must be clearly stated, he remains the war stop. He is allowed to continue speaking. But if someone dares to speak the truth, if someone dares to speak with the evil Putin, then it must be clearly stated he naturally belongs, I am allowed to quote the ORF, in the right corner of conspiracy theory and of course former US President Donald Trump. And then I have one more thing to say, and that is thank you, Tucker Carlson, for the courage needed. Because one thing must be said, other journalists also had this courage, for which they had to pay a bitter price. Among other things, for example, one of the most famous Austrian journalists, the editor-in-chief of the Süddeutsche Zeitung, who suddenly disappears, a farewell letter from her is found. A few days later, she is pulled out of the inn in Austria, still alive. And then you read in this farewell letter from her, I have learned a lot about media, mechanisms, people, and business. At least this hunt is over now, after allegations of plagiarism and massive pressure on her, because she was also working as a journalist for NEOS, an investigative platform. And there you can observe which things, which mechanisms, which people are presently engaged. And one thing must be clearly stated, peace has little place on this agenda. And one thing I would like to ask the EU Commission and Ursula von der Leyen directly is a simple question. Why are no peace efforts being made with Russia? Why no joint discussions, conversations, or a common future? The United Nations, UN, has the motto to understand and be understood by all. But the EU does not want to understand. The elites of our time refuse to understand. They don't want to listen, but they want to dictate. Not necessarily the other political color, but above all the people among them. And one thing is clear. I had a conversation with Jean-Claude Juncker. I have had many conversations with Jean-Claude Juncker. And once he clearly said that he has been a friend of Putin, he knows him as a person, has spent many days and nights with him, and also knows how to deal with him. And yes, in the event that the European Commission were to grant him a mandate to negotiate or even engage in negotiations for peace, he would undoubtedly accept this mandate if it is bestowed upon him. But this order has never been carried out to this day, and I wonder, they are preparing Europe for weapons production. one switches to a war economy in the European economy. Every day, new war ministers in Germany and all of Europe are calling for the great war against Russia. And then I wonder, where are the reasonable forces? Where are the ideologists who demand peace in and of itself instead of producing more weapons? 500,000 deceased already on the battlefield in Ukraine, the blood already spilled on the battlefield in Ukraine, and more will ensue. The economy in Europe as such is in a bad state. The economic growth, for example, of the OECD has once again halved the forecasts for Germany for 2024 to 0.3%, after experiencing a spectacular year with minus 0.1% in 2023. Russia, on the other hand, had a 3.1% economic growth in 2023 and a forecast of 1.8% for 2024. Assuming Russia's forecast to be doubled again in 2024 and Germany's to be halved once more. Yes, that is politics that we see today, and that is politics that we should put an end to today.
Hannes, you summarized everything well, and I haven't said it yet. I'm currently in the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates, and if you look at what's happening, I have to be honest and say there's no crisis. On the contrary, they're building for the future, already rebuilding the chessboards, or how should I say, the chess pieces, to see how things will continue afterwards. Mainstream media, as we know it here in the West, manipulation. This is not a topic here, but that's what it's all about. One must ready Westerners for what lies ahead, and for that, extensive propaganda is necessary, of course. When someone like Tucker Carlson comes, who is also just 100 meters away from me in the other building, then I have to say, Hannes, really extreme, because Tucker Carlson didn't do anything different what journalism should show, because you let everyone have their say and let the people in a democracy decide for themselves what is right or wrong. But that no longer exists. Only one view is shown. This view is fine, and if you reject it, you'll be instantly stigmatized, put in a corner, and essentially you're labeled as the others. But that, Hannes, is exactly fascism. It must be clearly stated here. Fascism is when a group comes together and then says, you others, you are the bad ones and we are the good ones. This is fascism. You can't call it anything else. So do we actually have to ask the people who are currently on the streets against the right, who is really on the other side here? And if you look at history, it has often been like this and has often shown that exactly the people who believe they are fighting for the good, who may even do things they would never have done, will later, unfortunately, Hannes, regret completely. And the great shame will come. The great shame will come after the crisis, but we're not there yet, Hannes. We'll experience much more. This interview by Dagmar Carlson was a glimmer of hope in the world of propaganda. You have to say it honestly.
Agreed, Benjamin. One more thing to note is the likely recurrence of the great shame. It has happened in history, but can be avoided this time. You can still change direction. And Benjamin, you mentioned traveling in the Middle East. I'm traveling in mid-America, and an example comes to mind of how a future could look like, namely El Salvador. Let's quickly examine El Salvador. Why don't we hear anything from El Salvador now? We've witnessed people following the eccentric president, the man with the turtle cap. One individual embraced Bitcoin as payment, even as an official, when it was added to the state balance sheet. And how the whole World Bank and all the media then pounced on him. One has seen how demonstrators in El Salvador protest against him as the country is finally going down the drain. Then we examine reality. Let's examine the reality 2 years later. No more words on it. No media on site. No one reports anymore about El Salvador's success and what occurred. The gang with the turtle shell has managed to reduce the murder rate in El Salvador, the country with the highest murder rate in the world, by minus 70%. Arrests a significant portion of the gangs, ultimately providing a certain level of security to the country. And with that, when security comes, an economic upswing also comes, and El Salvador is experiencing it massively. Not only domestic economic upturn, but also capital inflow from abroad. Education is highly rewarded, and this was also acknowledged by the voter because there were also elections in El Salvador. Congrats to Nayib, he got 85% of the votes and was re-elected as president. Well-deserved victory from El Salvador. And not only that, he has also managed to unite 58 out of the 60 seats in parliament for himself and his faction. And one must say, without any election fraud, without any protests against him, without the international community and international celebrities standing up for democracy and supporting the entire thing. But he managed to make a U-turn, and that should give us all courage. He managed to introduce a new payment system. He managed to break free from the dependence on the USA. He has managed to solve the crime in his own country and also the connections abroad, giving El Salvador a new self-confidence, a new identity. And this new identity is very strong for the very small country, but that can catch on worldwide. That's where we should orient. There we should not only look at the CAPI, but see what is feasible. And I think, Benjamin, that gives courage. That gives courage for more. And I think that if we all wake up together and we all connect to the truth a little further through the truth, then we will not only let this reality happen in El Salvador, but all over the world. And in that sense, thumbs up for the video.